Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, and our ongoing study in the Gospel of Mark. We're going to take a look at chapter 4, verses 30 through 34 on the parable of the mustard seed. And this is the parable that most closely aligns with the theological theme of the Gospel of Mark, meaning the theme of the Messianic secret. Let's go to block 1 and take a look at the text. Again, he said, "What shall we say the kingdom of God is like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch on its shade." With many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. But when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. That verse 34 is very important because it explains again how Christ used parables to veil the truth from the general audience, but then separately with the disciples, he had explained everything. So, very important verse 34. So again, we get this teaching. Remember, we're still within the context of the question that was asked like 3 lessons ago when the disciples asked Christ, "Why do you always teach in parables?" We're still within that context, okay? So remember the context. We're still in the context of Christ explaining why he teaches in parables. And John Mark points out that, yes, he taught in parables to the general population, but in private with his own disciples, he unpacked and explained everything. Let's move on to the commentary. We'll look at Ruckman and Edwards, block 2. And under Ruckman, here we go. The mustard seed is faith. See Matthew 17:20, see Luke 17:6. The Lord questions whether he will find any true faith upon his return. Luke 18:8. The multitudes get parables. The disciples get explanations. Very, very true. Well said, Ruckman. The multitudes get truth through the veil of parables. The disciples get explanations of the depth of meaning behind the parable. Now let's take a look at Edwards. The point of the mustard seed lies in contrast. The advent of the kingdom is something God gives. It is small and has an obscure beginning. It is hidden and overlooked. And today, the kingdom of God is hidden and overlooked by the majority of culture. People don't see spiritually. People are not concerned with God or God's kingdom. Today, the kingdom remains largely hidden and overlooked as well, just like in the first century. In that which is hidden, the foundation is laid for a kingdom that will encompass the entire whole world. But it is in fellowship with Christ that fuller understanding becomes a possibility. How do we perceive that hidden and overlooked spiritual realm? How do we comprehend that hidden and overlooked spiritual reality? How do we participate in the hidden and overlooked kingdom of God? One way and only one way, in fellowship with Christ, who is alive as the Son of Man at the right hand of the Father. And when we participate in fellowship with Christ, then we reach fuller understanding. Fuller comprehension becomes a genuine spiritual possibility. So Ruckman and Edwards both gave us very good commentary there, and that 1D is very true. The multitudes got truth through the veil of parables, but the disciples got explanations of the deeper truth within the parable. Very, very good statement by Ruckman in Block 2, 1D. Now in the Greek, I went to verse 34 because it's all about the private teaching, the private and personal teaching of Christ with the disciples. So I thought 34 was very, very important. Uk alelai autois choris paraboles. He would not speak to them, the crowd, without using parables. Kata idion de, in private, however, tois idiois matheiois, to his own disciples, epuluen panta. He would explain all things. And epiluo is epi, fitting, plus luo, unpack. In other words, in private, Christ would unpack and explain the truth behind the parable. It really is unpack. I like that. When theologians talk about unpacking the scriptures, that's very true to the Greek translation. Unpacking the hidden truth. So Christ would unpack and explain the truth behind the parables in private to his disciples who desired fellowship with Christ, and the disciples toward whom Christ personally called. The disciples were personally called into personal fellowship and personal covenant of friendship. Remember, the New Testament covenant Christ calls a covenant of friendship. Now, we can't get our head around that. The Son of Man is calling us friends. Well, according to the Gospel of John, he is. And that is a mystery that is beyond our comprehension. The living Son of Man at the right hand of the Father has invited us in and gathered us into a covenant of friendship, a genuine covenant of friendship. Now, I'm going to read the translation to verse 34, just a translation. He would not speak to them, the multitude, without using parables. In private, however, to his own disciples, he would explain all things. He would unpack and explain all things. Very, very powerful. And let's go to Block 2, Note 2, and this recap Edwards. The point of the mustard seed lies in contrast. The advent of the kingdom, which began with the incarnation. It is something God gives. The small and obscure beginning is hidden and overlooked in the first century, and today the kingdom is hidden and overlooked in 2023. People ignore God. People ignore the realm of spirit. People have no desire to even seek to recognize the realm of spirit. They are disinterested. They are apathetic. They are too wrapped up in self and living for the self. So today, as well as in the first century, the kingdom of God is usually hidden and overlooked and intentionally ignored today. The kingdom of God is intentionally ignored. The culture ignores God. The culture ignores realm of spirit. And the realm of spirit is the true reality. So in other words, culture ignores true reality for a false surface reality, and culture calls the false surface reality to be the true, which it is not. The realm of spirit is the true. But just like in the first century, John Mark points out, and it's true today, the kingdom of God is hidden and generally overlooked by culture in 2023 as well as the first century. But it is in fellowship with Christ that we do reach a fuller understanding of spiritual reality. Only through fellowship with Christ. It is the one and only way to apprehend true kingdom of God, true realm of spirit, and that is to seek out fellowship with Christ, with the risen Son of Man at the right hand of the Father. So as a final recap, let's read the block 1 text. Again, he said, what shall we say the kingdom of God is like? What is the kingdom of God like? Or what parable shall we use to describe it? It is like a mustard seed, which is the smallest of all seeds on earth. Yet when planted, it grows and becomes the largest of all garden plants, with such big branches that the birds can perch in its shade. With many similar parables, Jesus spoke the word to them as much as they could understand. He did not say anything to them, the multitude, without using a parable, but when he was alone with his disciples, he explained everything. In private with his disciples, he explained everything. He explained everything. Epiluo. He unpacked and explained the truth that did lie behind the parable. It means to unpack and explain. Very, very powerful additional testimony from John Mark on the context of the Messianic secret, which is the theme of the Gospel of Mark. And the parable of the mustard seed is all about the Messianic secret. So it really does fit with the theme of the Gospel of Mark overall. So that wraps up 4:30 through 34. Next time we go 4:35 to 41. Next time 4:35 to 41.